Hey guys, this is lesson 1, day 2, and we are learning more about ratios. So if you're watching this, make sure you already did lesson 1, day 1, yesterday's lesson, whether you were here or you did the video lesson. Also remember, as I give you directions, make sure you follow them. For example, I'm going to tell you to pause the video, to do some problems. Make sure you do that because that's how you're going to learn the most. So we're going to start by exploring the problem on this page, and you should be on page 4 in your book. And pause the video if you need to get caught up. In the meantime, I'm going to start. So we are comparing quantities using ratios, and it says, read the problem below, then explore different ways to compare quantities using ratios. So it says, Chris mixes 4 cups of cereal, 3 cups of pecans, and 2 cups of raisins to make a snack mix. How can you use ratios to compare the quantities of each ingredient and the total amount of snack mix? So this first part says picture it. So just try to develop a picture in your brain. You can use a diagram to represent the information below. So here are our 4 cups of cereal. Here are our 3 cups of pecans and our 2 cups of raisins. So maybe you can picture that in your head. Then another strategy is to model it. Now if you're like me and you can't draw nice little cups very well, you can use something called a tape diagram. So here's what it says. You can use a tape diagram to help you see the amounts of ingredients, how they compare to one another and to the total amount. So instead of drawing 4 cups of cereal, in a tape diagram you just have 4 rectangles. The 3 cups of pecans, 3 rectangles, 2 cups of raisins, 2 cups of raisins here. And the total, if you were to add these up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the total is going to be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's just what this means. Now we're going to go to page 5, but I'm going to keep both pages next to each other so we can kind of use them together. So your first job is going to be to work on the connect it problems, but we're going to kind of get you started a little bit. So here's where it says connect it. Now you will solve the problems from the previous page using ratios to compare the quantities. So we'll get you started here. Let me pause and get the page set up. So here's what you're going to do. You are going to be working on 2 through 6. Now what I want you to do is you're going to pause the video. You're going to do 2 through 6, and you're going to use the information from the page to the left in your book to answer questions 2 through 6. Now, as you do these problems, I want you to realize that it's okay if you make mistakes. If you're not sure, you just give it your best guess. And when you're done with 2 through 6, you're going to hit play and go over them. All right? So pause the video, do 2 through 6 now, and press play as soon as you're done. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. So, in problem 2, it says, what are the 3 ways to write the ratio of cups of cereal to cups of pecans? So let's take a look over here at the cereal, the pecans. Notice, there are 4 cups of cereal, right? And there are 3 cups of pecans. So our ratio is going to be 4 to 3. And you can write that as 4 to 3 with the word 2, 4 to 3 with a colon, or like a fraction, 4 to 3, even though it looks like 4/3. So if you had 2 right, give yourself a C for correct. If you had it wrong, just mark it wrong and fix it. No big deal. No big deal. Okay, number 3. It says, does the ratio of cereal to pecans compare part to part, part to whole, or whole to part? So there's whole to part. So let's take a look at our diagram here. So remember, the whole would be the total. If you were to add up all of the cereal, the pecans, and the raisins, that's what the total is. So since we are only comparing the cereal with the pecans, we're comparing 2 parts. So this is what we would call a part-to-part ratio. So remember, the cereal is a part and the pecans are a part. So for the answer to number 3 is a part-to-part ratio. Now 4 says, what is the total amount of snack mix? Now 2 ways you could do this. Let's say you were using the pictures of the cups. You could just count 1 cup, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cups. if you were using the tape diagrams, you could just look down here at the total. If you remember that each rectangle represents a cup, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cups. So the answer to number 4 is 9 cups. Number 5 says, write ratios to compare the amount of each ingredient to the total amount of snack mix. All right, so let's start with cereal. Let me get my eraser going so I can clean up some of my mess here. So remember, for each one of these, the total is 9 cups. We have to add all of them up. Now for cereal, there are 4 cups of cereal. For pecans, there are 3 cups of pecans. And for raisins, there are 2 cups of raisins, right? So number 5, for cereal, says write the ratios for each ingredient. So we would have, I'm going to label it cereal. So we would have 4 cups of cereal to 9 total cups. Now, for the next ingredient, pecans, we have 3 cups of pecans, right? So I'll write this here in blue. We have 3 cups of pecans to still 9 total cups because the total doesn't change. And then the third one was raisins. We have 2 cups of raisins, right? So I'm going to label it raisins. And we have 2 cups of raisins to 9 total cups. Notice in each one, the total stays the 9. The only thing that changed was the part, the cereal, the pecans, or the raisins. And in 6, it says, explain how you can write a ratio to compare 2 different quantities. Now, all I'm looking for here is that you add a good 2 to 3 sentences just talking about how you can compare 2 quantities, whether it's a part to a whole or a part to a part, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and write my answer, and I'll explain it when I'm done. Okay, so here's what I came up with. Now, I'm going to add an example in a second. And remember, your answer does not need to be exactly the same thing. So here's all I said. I said in a ratio, oops, sorry about that. In a ratio, the first number represents the first quantity, and the second number represents the second quantity, right? So just think above. The first number here was 4 cups of cereal. The second number, 9, was the total cups of trail mix. So I'm going to add down here, I'm going to say, for example, we could say 2 to 3 could mean, let me think of something, maybe 2 ink pens for every 3 pencils. Okay, so that's just my example. Now, one of the good things I want you to make sure in your explanation is after you kind of explain it, like I said in the ratio, the first number represents the first quantity, the second number represents the second, you should always give an example to kind of help clarify what you mean. So that's why I said 2 to 3 could mean 2 ink pens to every 3 pencils. All right, you can make up any objects that you want. All right, so now, if you need to, you could pause the video and make any corrections in 2 through 6 that you needed. In the meantime, we're going to go down and we're going to finish this up for 7 and 8. Now, what I'm going to do is, as we read 7 and 8, I'm going to do this first part of 7 and this first part of 8. After I do that, you are going to do the second and third part of 7 and the second and third part of 8 on your own, and then you'll watch the video. So stick with me as we do 7. So first off, 7 says, Leo blew up 7 balloons. So right now that's total balloons, right? Kathy blew up 5 balloons, so that's her balloons. It says, write each ratio in at least 2 different ways. Now, at least means you have to do at least 2 different, but you could do 3 different ways. So I'm going to do 3 just because I'm wild and crazy that way. So first one says ratio of Kathy's balloons to Leo's balloons. So Kathy blew up 5 balloons. So in this part, the 5 needs to come first. And so that's Kathy's. To Leo's balloons, Leo blew up 7 balloons. So it's 5 to 7. Now it said at least two different ways. So I'm going to do 5 to 7, 5 to 7, 5 to 7 like a fraction. Now notice again, because Kathy's balloons come first, you must have the 5 first. That's very important when you're doing a ratio. Now in number 8, it says each class has the goal of selling 100 tickets to the school carnival. Miss Garcia's class sells 87 tickets. Mr. Carpenter's class sells 113 tickets. Write each ratio in at least 2 different ways. So again, I'm going to do it all 3 ways just so you can see it. So the first one says the ratio of Miss Garcia's sales to the goal. So Miss Garcia's sales must come first. So remember, it said Miss Garcia's class sells 87 tickets. So the 87 must be first. And the goal, it says each class has the goal of selling 100 tickets. So the second number is going to be 100. Now remember, it said at least 2 different ways. So I have 87 to 100. I have 87 to 100 like a fraction. And I have 87 to 100 with a colon. Remember, you just have to pick two different ways. All right, so you should have just done the first part of 7 and 8 with me, right? So now, here's your job. You are going to pause this video. You are going to finish number 7. You're going to do this part here and this part here. And you are going to finish number 8. Do this part here to this part here. So pause the video, do those 4 parts, and restart the video as soon as you're done and go over your answers. Go. All right, so let's see how you did. So in this one, it says the ratio of Leo's balloons to Kathy's balloons. So now, Leo's balloons comes first. So it says Leo blew up 7 balloons, so you should have 7 first. Kathy's balloons come second, so Kathy blew up 5 balloons. So in this one, it's 7 to 5. Remember, you only have to have it written 2 different ways, but if you have 3, cool. The next one says the ratio of total balloons to Leo's balloons. So to find the total, did you add up Leo and Kathy's balloons? So remember, Leo had 7 balloons, right? Kathy blew up 5. So if you add those together, you'll get the total, and 7 plus 5 is 12. So the ratio of total balloons, I need to have the 12 first, to Leo's balloons. And remember, Leo blew up 7 balloons. So it's 12 to 7, 12 to 7, and 12 to 7. So remember, it's important to get the numbers in the same order that the words came in the problem. All right, so let's go down and finish number 8. So the first part says ratio of Mr. Carpenter's sales to the goal. So remember, Mr. Carpenter, it says Mr. Carpenter's class sells 113 tickets. So that has to come first, the 113. And the goal, just like before, says each class has a goal of selling 100 tickets. So it's 113 to 100. And have that at least 2 different ways. And in the third, or the last part, it says ratio of Mr. Carpenter's sales to Miss Garcia's sales. So do you have Mr. Carpenter's sales first? So Mr. Carpenter, remember, it says Mr. Carpenter sells 113 tickets. So the 113 has to be first. And Miss Garcia's sales has to come second. So it says Miss Garcia's class sells 87 tickets. So your answer is 113 to 87, and have that at least 2 different ways, but I'll write them all 3. So here's my question. How did you do on those that you did on your own? Did you get them all right? You understand this? Did you have to make some corrections, which is no big deal? Just remember, if you made any mistakes, please correct them along with the video. You can pause this, you can go back and rewatch it anytime you need to. All right, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, as always, for watching.